Jalen Hurts is ready for the 2024 NFL playoffs. We're going to dive deep into his matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers from this past Sunday, as well as stock up, stock down after a massive win over the Steelers. Locked On Eagles coming your way.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by my co-host Gino Camilleri, continuing to recap I think a dominant performance. Even though the score says it was only a 2-touchdown difference, the Eagles dominated the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday to get their record-setting 10th straight win, the longest win streak in franchise history. The Steelers were 10-3, a top 5 defense. Russell Wilson having kind of a comeback player of the year type of season so far, and the Eagles just completely took over that game on both sides. Actually, I didn't even realize this, Gino, during the game that the Eagles got the ball back with, 10:21 left in the fourth quarter. They didn't even give them the ball back. I don't even think I realized that during the game, but just unbelievable domination. And that started with QB1 Jalen Hurts. That game convinced me he's ready for this run into the postseason.
Is that what y'all wanted to see?
That
what
was
a
so,
response.
Yeah, that was
what
awesome.
A way
that was pretty cool.
to sit down in the interview chair post-game and just say, this is what you guys wanted. You know that we've done this before. You knew we could do it again. But it's not just him, Lou. I think, all in all, the game plan was excellent. They knew that Pittsburgh was going to throw a lot of different pressures at them up front, right? And behind that pressure, they play a lot of man. And what do the Philadelphia Eagles have? Two of the best wide receivers when it comes to beating one-on-one man coverage.
Maybe the two best you can make the argument for, or at least two of the top 5, top 10.
Yeah, arguably the best duo right now. And after that game where they both go for a buck apiece, both have a touchdown, Jalen Hurts and their connection, it's just underappreciated at this point because a lot of the stuff they do is predicated on timing, it's predicated on trust, it's predicated on these guys being in spots that Jalen knows that they're going to be in, and that doesn't just happen overnight. These guys have continued to mold their relationship, and that's why last week was completely overblown, and that's why, in my opinion, having the 31st passing offense is overblown as well, because especially after this outing, and I had a lot more trust than you did, I think, in this conversation. But for both of us, and I think a lot of people now, you're looking at it and saying, this is the first game Saquon Barkley wasn't the guy that you won a game because of. It wasn't the MVP, Offensive Player of the Year game that Saquon has put on display. Still a pretty good game, but he was banged up. He was in and out. Kenny G, he was your changeup. He performed great. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But they knew that they had to just continue to pass the ball to have any sort of chance in this game. And talk about having any chance. Pittsburgh didn't have a chance because they were converting on money downs. They were converting in the red zone. Jalen Hurts' average depth of target, Lou, one of the things that you get when it is pinpoint precise and they do like to chuck the ball downfield is that you're going to just average a big play after a big play after a big play. I think through the first quarter, they already had 4 plays of 20-plus yards.
Yeah,
that's
because the Steelers kept giving them.
That has happened all season long.
The Steelers kept giving them one-on-one looks. And Pittsburgh, by the way, that defense, no slouch against the pass heading into the matchup. The Steelers allowed the second lowest pass rating this year heading into that game. Jalen Hurts finished the matchup with a 78.1% completion percentage, 290 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 1 each to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and a 125.3 rating. So for me, I think I was a little less confident than you, and I think justifiably so for, in my own defense before this game. But after seeing Jalen, Brown, Smith, Kellen Moore even be so in command and dominant against that kind of unit, now I'm convinced they're ready for the postseason. And that's like just another win against a good team. The Eagles are 5-1 this year against winning football teams, and there's a plus 32 point differential in those matchups. So Jalen Hurts, this entire offense, and the entire team, really, they save their best performances for the biggest stage, and that really does start with their quarterback.
One of Bill Belichick's great quotes is, "You really find out who a team is after Thanksgiving." I think we know who this team is, Lou. And I think after this week especially, to add on the passing game, Jalen Hurts, 4th according to Next Gen Stats in completion percentage, over expected. The tight window throws are on the money. There were even some throws that I went through and charted the whole game, maybe 1 or 2 that he missed on. And funny enough, I went and watched JT O'Sullivan's breakdown, and it was the same 2 plays. I was like, maybe we have something here. Not sure how they teach it in the room. But outside of that, man, they were on the money. They knew how they were going to beat the Pittsburgh
They were just
Steelers.
So in control. You look at a few passes, the one I'm thinking of across the middle where Jalen's kind of pointing Saquon to the left sideline, and he's kind of out of the side of his eye looking at Devonta coming open over the middle and just manipulates the defense with his eyes, and boom, another first down to Devonta. Or, when he's on the run, but he keeps his eyes up, finds Devonta for a bigger pass play than, he could have picked up 7 yards in the run, a 13-yard pass play instead to Devonta Smith. He was just so in control. Everything, it just felt like the game, he was almost seeing everything. Everybody else was moving in slow motion for Jalen. I haven't seen him in that kind of command in a little bit. That was really impressive considering the opponent.
I thought I'm just going to say one. There was one ball on that one to Jahan Dotson in the end zone that it kind of was batted out of bounds. But the one ball I would have liked to seen thrown a little bit better was the one where he kind of underthrew A.J. Brown, and the defender was underneath A.J., and he kind of made a play on it.
The touchdown?
No, not on the no, this was an
that was a laser. Off his back foot.
Oh, no. I'm not talking about either of the touchdowns. The touchdowns were absolute rockets. I wrote down on both of them when I was trying to.
The Brown one especially was impressive. Yeah.
No, there's a play where it's it was the right read. They're playing single high. No, they were actually playing cover 3 because he was in a zone turn. So the corner had him capped. And if he puts the ball out there, AJ can probably stack the defender and run behind him and get it. But that's just nitpicking. One thing you said that I wanted to highlight, Lou, was that his eyes were up a lot. And another thing that you said, and I just want to make sure I kind of hit it on the money here, but he was able to manipulate defenders with his eyes. That's the point I wanted to get to. There were multiple
Brady
times
noticed that too.
Where it was just these quick man reads. They ran a lot of a quick out from Grant Calcaterra with a slant underneath it from A.J. Brown. And they would do something on the opposite side with Devonta Smith, and he would hold his eyes to Devonta Smith's side, knowing where he's going to go pre-snap, and everything kind of worked out because A.J. Brown did a fantastic job getting off of one-on-one coverage. There was maybe 1 or 2 times where he was kind of jammed at the line, couldn't get out of his route in proper timing, but outside of that, he was money. Devonta Smith did a fantastic job understanding spacing. Grant Calcaterra, if you go back and watch the All-22 loot, there was probably 2 times in this game where he would have scored a big touchdown. One, he's sitting wide open if he has another second. That's on the Kenny Gainwell crosser where they put him in motion. Still great, gets down to the 1-yard line. But there's another one where he's just running free on this seam route, and Jalen, he kind of sees him, but he dropped his eyes to another target. He was still going through his progressions, but Grant Calcaterra jumped up and he knew that he had something there. But outside of that, man, every time I was going through a play, it was the ball was on time, his feet were in balance, the throw was in rhythm.
Even the one-on-one ball on the left sideline to A.J. Brown, one-on-one, just the jump ball. I loved seeing him just give his guy a chance, almost like a post-up play in basketball. And again, I want to keep harping on who the opponent was because everybody knows I was a Carson Wentz guy. But one thing even I had a problem with Carson in the past is I was never satisfied. We just didn't see enough moments of greatness in championship-like situations against great quarterbacks, against great defenses, high-pressure situations. Sometimes Carson just wasn't available for those moments, and sometimes he was just okay. He wasn't great in those situations. With Jalen, this is all he's known since college. Big games at Alabama, big games at Oklahoma, big games like the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles. But like, there's so much that goes into evaluating a quarterback, but that part is so massive to me. Like, can you beat the best quarterbacks, the best defenses, the best teams? Are you at your best in those situations or the worst? Like close games, fourth quarter stats, when you face, like this week, the most amount of pressure both on and off the field. Not every star is at their best. Not that they're terrible in those spots, but look at my guy Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar, but he is not at his tip-top best in these kind of moments. Jalen Hurts, I think the strongest trait he has, say what you will, I have about his inconsistencies, this is something that's always been consistent. And that was shown again against Pittsburgh, and he's been doing that all year against good teams. And so if there's one thing to hold on to for feeling confident about this postseason for Philly, it's that.
The one thing I'm going to counter you, but not in like a negative way, that I feel really good about everything Jalen did in this game, but one thing that I think you could look at the box score, you'll probably see the sack numbers that he took. I think that's where you have to use context in this game and realize, like, hey, even Lane Johnson said it, like, being on an island with TJ Watt, that whole game sucked. Like, that's not fun.
Say, that's
occasionally you got to give it to the other team. You got to remember, these guys are pros, and those guys are all pros. They're going to make good football plays. And I thought Jalen Hurts multiple times, Lou, in this game, if he's not a mobile quarterback, like, he's taking sacks. What about that one where he like slips out and he has a guy on his foot and he finds Saquon off to the sideline there and only pick up 4 yards? But those are the little plays that you have to contextualize against a really good defense. I
was gonna say that defense is gonna make plays against anybody, Gino.
Yes, exactly.
And we talked about this might be a rock fight again, like it was against Baltimore. This was not a rock fight. Like,
you outgained them by nearly 300 yards in this game.
That's the thing, is they had a couple nice plays, like TJ Watt's punch out, the fumble was an incredible play from an elite generational player. But overall, I think if you would have found out what the end result was last week, I mean, that is literally the ideal scenario. So I'm ecstatic about what Jalen Hurts did on Sunday.
And I think it was as terrible as Tom Brady was at times on the broadcast, where he said that David Akers was the kicker.
Tom went back in time for a second there.
That was hysterical. The one thing he did a really good job of was giving Jalen Hurts his credit, not just during the game, but that little post-game interview that he did with him. And he told him, he's like, the things you're doing as a quarterback are really impressive. So if the GOAT's saying that, you got to trust his opinion to some degree, right? And if you are saying anything negative in the passing game towards Jalen after that game, you just have an agenda. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Jalen Hurts has done everything this year.
I want this to be proof, by the way, that I'm not one of those guys that have an agenda. Oh, because when we get these kind of moments, I'm not
your
like
opinion
biting
will
down
change
on...
like with exam, but you are the scientist of the group, Lou. You are constantly hypothesis testing Jalen Hurts. Like,
my opinion's going to change the more evidence I get. I don't know why people have an issue with that. I don't like. People still go back to my week 4 takes. Like, you're not allowed to have this take now.
Hey, I wanted Nick Sirianni fired, and I regret everything I said about that.
But I don't even want. Like, I've never gone after you for that. Number one, because I said the same thing. But number two, at the time, I feel like that was an okay take. Now it's not. But I don't know. I think that's just sometimes people are the prisoner of the moment. But
without a doubt, Jalen Hurts not a prisoner of the moment, man. If he does anything, he doesn't let the moment get the best of him. That's the best trait, Lou, that regardless of the game and the spotlight, and that's a huge spotlight, man. Like, that is it a potential Super Bowl preview? Like, who knows? That could be a team you're facing in February. It's of a caliber of a team that you're going to be facing in February. And what has Jalen Hurts and this team done since the bye week against every other team, and even Green Bay before that, against the teams that have the caliber to potentially be playing in February? He wins those games. And this one, go watch the All-22. A lot of fun stuff. He does a really good job going through his progressions. There's times where he throws guys open with ease, Lou, and he just looked confident, and that rhythm, the tempo that we were talking about, that stuff helped him out.
He's a rhythmic
helped
player,
out
man.
AJ, it helped out Devontae. It really helped out this offense get going. And when you can do that early on, and then at the end of the game, Lou, you have to try and defend them and get off the field with 10 minutes left, you already used most of the gasoline in the first quarter trying to keep pace with them. And then they just dragged you through the mud in the fourth quarter.
It's ridiculous that Pittsburgh didn't get the ball back. That's one of the coolest things.
That's a tough recipe to beat any team. At
Against
any
that
level,
defense,
Lou, if they can do that, man, that's a tough team to beat.
Yeah, and it's not just Jalen Hurts. Like, that was an entire domination from start to finish from the entire roster. So we're going to highlight some other players and coaches. Stock up coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
This episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Just like the Philadelphia Eagles, Game Time is focused on togetherness. Nick Sirianni did not write this. This is actually from Game Time. But this season, this holiday season especially, that means you want to bring people together at live events and experience all of the fun things in your life with the ones that you love. So right now, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. They filter out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you want to grab tickets to head just a short drive down to Maryland to potentially see the Philadelphia Eagles clinch the NFC East against the Washington Commanders, you could do that at Game Time. If you want to pick up tickets post-Christmas, get them as a gift to the final 2 home games for the Birds, or if you like comedy, if you like theater, whatever you enjoy, you can get your tickets over at Game Time. So download the Game Time app and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Today's Locked On Eagles is also sponsored by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5. You're going to get $150 back in bonus bets if you win that first bet. And if you took the over on A.J. Brown's receiving totals this week or Devonta Smith's, you won big. FanDuel Sportsbook app, they give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, time for stock up after a big win for the Philadelphia Eagles over the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are now 12-2. They've won 10 straight games, 12 on the year, tied for first place in the NFC with both now the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. So it's going to be a race to the finish. Luckily, Jalen Hurts right now playing at his best, a massive dominant performance against an elite defense. But Gino, I can't stress enough how impressive Kellen Moore was, though, as well in this game. What he did to not only get Jalen Hurts going, but also A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, the pass game as a whole. I think that was by far his best performance of the season. I mean, there was just so many cool things that he did. Going back to the All-22, I didn't even realize some of the wrinkles that he kind of designed in that game. It was really impressive, and that's how he helped elevate an already star-filled offense to perform better against an elite defense than they probably should have, even with the talent they have.
I think he did a really good job early and often making sure he thought about players and not plays. Because there's been some games, you go a couple games back, and like Will Shipley has a target 2 drives before A.J. Brown ever.
Dotson has 2 screen passes before Smitty's got
Britton
the ball.
Covey is involved in the rotation as well. Yeah. No. They said we have 2 elite guys on the outside against a team that is going to give us some man looks, and Jalen Hurts, who has been exceptional against the blitz, continued to do exactly that. All of these stats here are from our friend Jeff Kerr over at CBS Sports. Jalen Hurts against the blitz, 8 of 11, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 139.4 rating, and a lot of that came because he was targeting A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. When he was targeting A.J. Brown, 8 of 11, 110 yards, a touchdown, 134.7 rating. When targeting Devonta Smith, 11 of 12, 109 yards, a touchdown, 132.3 rating. So you're saying 23 targets, 19 catches. The game goes through those 2 guys. Keep it simple, stupid. It's one of those things you learn in preschool, and we're overcomplicating this game, and then it's like, no, throw it to the guy who's built like Derrick Henry out wide, and then throw it to maybe the one outlier of the slim reaping wide receiver outside who's so good at running routes.
I was told by a prominent Eagles media person that I was insane for trying to force the ball to A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith this week. I think, making a conceited effort to get the ball in the hands of your elite playmakers is good business, and I think that's what you saw this week. But it wasn't just, as you mentioned, like getting Brown and Smith involved. I loved seeing the tempo early on to get the blood flowing. I think sometimes this offense comes out far too slow and lackadaisical and just they look disinterested at times. I think the tempo helped change that. I like how much they used a moving pocket for Jalen. Even though he's sometimes not been great throwing across his body, this year he has been, and I like that they did that to get him away from TJ Watt. They used a lot of motion, like that touchdown for Devonta Smith. He's in the slot. They push him out wide, but then he comes back underneath, kind of a little pick play on a crosser.
Yep,
it was just a
design play.
Yeah, again, like A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, they can make plays on their own. It doesn't matter what you call. Like, they're going to elevate, right? But this game showed you, okay, you pair them up, that elite talent, with an elite play calling job, you're almost virtually impossible to stop.
They probably ran, and JT O'Sullivan was kind of getting PO'd about it, but they ran like shallow cross with Devonta Smith and Grant Calcaterra, and either of those two guys were running some form of a drag, and one of them was running a sit between the hashes. But it was smart because Pittsburgh had one linebacker in conflict between those two guys, so it was just a game of Jalen Hurts reading the situation. Whatever the guy that the linebacker goes with, I'm just going to pitch and catch to the other guy. And if it works, just continue to do that. And a lot of the stuff Kellen Moore did, it was just different looks of a similar design play.
And
that
Pittsburgh
Kenny
just kept
Gainwell
giving you one-on-one
cross,
looks.
Same
you know what
thing.
I mean? They weren't changing
100%.
things up. And
no,
that's
they
why,
weren't adjusting.
That's why you just keep doing it because, I mean, how many times... And A.J. Brown, by the way, Gino, against man coverage this year, first in yards per game, first in yards per route run, and first in yards per target. So
Shocker.
Pittsburgh just kept throwing Joey Porter at him one-on-one, and like these two were completely dominant.
They're both good by themselves. I think we saw that when Devontae didn't have AJ his rookie year. When AJ comes in, you realize how good they are together. And then this season, we've seen both sides of the coin, where one of them is in the lineup and the other isn't. They both work, but not as well. When you give a car two engines, of course it's going to be superior to the car with one engine. And that's exactly what the Eagles are when they have those two, Lou. They are a Hemi-powered offense that can push the ball down the field in a multitude of different ways. The routes that these guys can run are unbelievable. The trust that Jalen Hurts has built with these guys cannot go underappreciated. To have both of them young and being able to develop with Jalen, having Kellen Moore realize, hey, I've had guys like this in the past. Like, hey, Kellen Moore, you remember what it was like to have CeeDee Lamb and we could just give him the ball 20 times? Well, between these two guys, that's what they did. They gave him the ball 20-plus times, and look what happened.
And this was a game, by the way, he used Devonta Smith kind of like CeeDee Lamb in the slot. I mean, how many third and longs did this guy convert over the middle of the field? Like, and everything that was going on this week, all the noise, what was kind of lost in it was the need to get Devonta Smith more involved in the game plan, not A.J. Brown. And I thought Devonta was incredible overall.
And it's okay to force it when they're good, man.
Yeah, forcing it's not a bad... Again, I don't like the word forcing it as if like it's unnecessary. It's necessary to get those two players the ball.
Yes, without a doubt. And look at what happened, Lou. And we've seen the success of the run game setting up the pass game probably 90% of the season. In this game, what was the final drive? Yeah, there were a couple times when they converted some good plays, but it was running the ball, grinding the clock down with a combination of Saquon Barkley and Kenneth Gainwell, and they were able to do that because, like you love to say, Lou, when you're on the opposite end of the coin, if you're a team that can pass, you can do this. You could put teams away early on and just run the ball at the end. Well, now you can do both of those things. You can be the fast-paced car, but at the other side of it, you can run their fast-paced car over because you have a bulldozer on the
soft shell
defense,
tacos in this
yeah, good way to put it,
both?
man.
How about
I'm
both?
already hungry, making me already even more hungry.
All right, let's wrap up today's edition of Locked On Eagles with Stock Up. We'll continue to do Stock Up with the defense as we wrap up the show coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by the College Football Playoff. That's right, it's that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, leading into their first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. So through all of the dominant offensive storylines that we can talk about between this Eagles-Steelers matchup on Sunday, the defense, yet again, just doing what they do, shutting down the pass, shutting down the run game, being the number one unit in the league. And I think one guy I do want to highlight to start this up again, Nolan Smith. I mean, was this the best game of this guy's career? I don't think it was even close. He was everywhere and impacting the game. He impacted the game in so many different ways.
You needed Nolan Smith to be this player, and I don't say that lightly.
I thought it was Hassan Reddick out there for a minute.
Especially right now. Because let's take a step back to the offseason. We were saying, yeah, he needs to take a jump for sure, but you have 5 guys that you realistically can get through the season with. You only have 3 of them on the field right now. Yeah. One of them really didn't start getting snaps until 3 weeks ago. So you realistically have 2 starting edge rushers. Nolan Smith, when I said needed to take this jump, how necessary was it, Lou? And how good are him and Josh Sweat together? The athleticism, the speed that those guys play with. And you look at Josh Sweat, you're not going to say, oh, that's like a big bruising guy, but he's 6'6", he's got length.
Yeah.
He's technically, I would say, an undersized edge rusher.
I blame the number 19. It makes him look smaller than he is.
You look at Nolan Smith as well. He's an exceptionally undersized edge rusher, but both of those guys play with so much ferocity and such a high motor that they can set the edge, and that has been the difference, I think, since the bye week, Lou, because you can't run against them. Neither Najee Harris, neither Jalen Warren. They did a good job of making sure Russell Wilson stayed in the pocket. They've done a good job of taking away the run all season long. But one thing that they have done that nobody can do on them, Lou, outside of a flea flicker play, nobody can find an explosive play on this Eagles defense. Nobody. No. You can't find a crack in the foundation and get behind them because the communication on the back end, Lou, and this is why Nolan Smith can play so good up front, is because you give a guy like that 2.5 seconds, which in past seasons, you couldn't cover for 2.5 seconds. They could cover for 4 seconds on the back end. Nolan Smith, this guy runs like a 4.33, and he can get off the edge quicker than just about anybody. That's a match made in heaven. A speed power rusher who doesn't need much time at all. You're seeing the bend. You're seeing the versatility being one of those guys. And in a game against Pittsburgh, who did an excellent job of showing 6-7 guys at the line, but multiple times different guys are dropping out. Like Nick Herbig on the opposite side. Multiple times he's coming after you in the pass rush, but he's also going to be a guy in coverage. Nolan Smith can do that for you as well. And that's why Jalix Hunt, that's a perfect role model to have because they're very similar type of players. You look at the build, you look at the frame, you look at the athleticism. I mean, they're the same guy. I mean, it would be nice if Jalix Hunt could give Nolan Smith like 2 inches of his arms because he's a little bit longer in the limbs. But as a unit in all, Lou, those 3 guys have stepped up to the plate exceptionally.
And you got to give Jalen Carter a lot of that credit. These guys are getting, Milton Williams looked good again today, and so did Josh Sweat, or Sunday, I should say. He had another sack, 8th on the year, because they're all getting one-on-one matchups. Jalen Carter, if you watch that tape, Pittsburgh was so focused on making sure he didn't wreck every single play. But at the same time, like Nolan Smith himself, 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hits. He had 4 of the Eagles' 8 total pressures. He had a pass deflection. Like you said, he was making plays in coverage too, down the right sidelines. I saw a couple nice reps in the red zone on some wheel routes. I mean, again, all these guys are taking advantage of the fruits of Jalen Carter's labor. But at the same time, he, in his own right, looks like an elite overhang player over the last month.
The thing that you get with Jalen Carter is that he is a problem, not just on Sundays, Lou. He's a problem Monday through Saturday. I forgot. I wish I saved the tweet, but it wasn't from anybody in the Eagles sphere. It was just a national media guy, but he was saying Jalen Carter is becoming a guy that you have to remember every single play.
You can tell the offense is focused on where he is. Like, they have to double him every
single play.
And as long as he's not punching guys in the face, like, we're good. That's the only thing, Carter. Just chill out a little bit.
But that's so crazy. But
I like it though.
I said that's so crazy. That was a Freudian slip there, Lou. Yeah. That was a little Freudian slip, but yes.
I know he can't take that penalty, but what I liked about that game and even that moment, Gino, is this defense is mean again. Like, they're aggressive, and that was something I threw in here too. Stock up just to the defensive attitude, and it's not just Jalen Carter, but I mean, this play right here where Darnell Washington, a 6'7" tight end, is throwing Darius Slay into the crowd after the whistle, and Quinyon Mitchell just comes in like a psychopath and just starts throwing haymakers, and the whole defense gets in on it. And that shows the direct impact of Nick Sirianni's message about being together. And Quinyon even said that after the game. He's like, that was, Sirianni, coach talks all the time about us playing together, and that was one of those moments. So you could see, like, that's resonating with these guys. And I love that the rookie that grew up loving Darius Slay and, what's the right word? Trying to emulate his game after him, just going after a giant tight end in his honor. I thought that was so cool.
And I think it's really cool because it doesn't just, and the word you were looking for and you finally found it was emulate. It doesn't just emulate what they do off the field, but it emulates what they do on the field too, because you talk about riding together. Look at how many guys are at the ball every single time.
Just swarm to it.
So the reason why they finally got the ball to bounce their way, even though it wasn't a forced fumble, Lou, it's the habit of everybody getting to the football. You don't stop until the whistle blows. Everybody has to have a hat on a hat. And when you don't have a hat, go tackle the football. Why were there multiple Eagles players around that ball and there was only Najee Harris there for a little bit? Because that's the mentality. And then that carries over to when Darius Slay is getting dog walked by somebody who's 4 inches bigger than him. Like, pick on a defensive end here, Darnell Washington. What are we doing? Quinyon Mitchell, the young dogs, those young pit bulls, they come out of the blue, they start riding for their guy, and that mentality just continues to transfer over to everybody. It's Zach Bond, it's Nakobe Dean, dogs, it's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, it's Reed Blankenship, it's these guys all playing with the same mentality. They have to be vicious, they have to tackle, they have to set the tone. Nobody's going to have explosive plays on them. They're going to just crush the will of their opponents, to be honest. Like, whatever you like to do, if you like to run it, you like to pass it, so be it. We're going to take that away. You're not going to be able to do that. And one guy we haven't mentioned yet, Jordan Davis, Lou. This guy, none of this stuff happens without him. He's never going to get it, but
he's the meat and potatoes, man.
He's a punching bag, dude. Yeah. Like, he just gets bullied every single play, but the guys are able to fly around because he's so selfless. He does the little things, the detailed areas, in a Fangio defense where you need the little areas to be detailed. So the big things don't happen, and the big things are explosive plays. When's the last time the Eagles have allowed an explosive play? I couldn't tell you, man. That wasn't a trick play.
No, I couldn't tell you. And another guy, I think, before we wrap up the show, that deserves a shout-out, too, that's underrated, or at least was in this football game, Kenneth Gainwell, right, Gino? I mean, 120 all-purpose yards if you include the really good kickoff return he had, 60 yards on the ground and through the air combined, 40 yards receiving, 20 yards rushing, had a huge third and long conversion where he broke 2 tackles to move the sticks, and that was a one-score football game. So, I've been hard on Kenny G over the years, and I think sometimes they've overused him or used him in wrong spots or just not in the right way. But I think over the last, 2 months, he's been a really good complementary piece to Saquon, especially in the receiving. I thought he had a nice play. You were mentioning it earlier in the show where Moore had him in motion at receiver, and he had a nice crossing route for a first down. I'm kind of in on Kenneth Gainwell right now, the way they're using him.
And the reason why, and this goes back, and I think we also have to highlight Nick Sirianni for what a fantastic job he has continued to do here down the stretch. But Nick Sirianni, he's been here, obviously, since they fired Doug Peterson, and they got to a Super Bowl back in 2022, Lou. Who was the back that they trusted the most in that playoff run? It was good old Kenny G. He was playing the sweet tunes on the saxophone, and yes, I intentionally said saxophone wrong, but I was making a pun on Kenny G. But Kenny G was legitimately good. And in 2023, he definitely didn't have the best year. This season, Lou, you are seeing 2022 playoff Kenny Gainwell, and maybe that might have been his best game of his career.
I think so.
His decisiveness, his viciousness, the way he was running downhill, you're like, this guy is running like Saquon. He's running like a guy who can squat 600 pounds. He's been doing that a lot
this year. I think Saquon has really gotten him to be a more physical player, for sure.
And just that dog mentality of like, even as little as I am, I'm going to put my shoulder down and I'm going to do... Dude, that spin move he had on... Who was that? Was that Dante Jackson, I believe?
Yeah.
Like, oof, man. He went out of the game maybe because his soul was crushed after that. That was a tough one. But the reason we were so difficult on him in 2023 and a lot of the first stretch of this season was because of what we saw. Like, was it lightning in a bottle in 2022? And I think we're finding out... No, I think he's a legitimately good football player who can play multiple different roles for you. And
he's a free agent next year. He's probably going to get a solid deal, if not
if he's willing to come back on like, I mean, you're going to pay him like $3.5 to $5 million.
Yeah, you got to be disciplined
but like
with
in that backfield, those two guys they're really doing a good job complementing each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the part of Nick Sirianni, going back to that Super Bowl run, he's trusted him. He never wavered on the trust, and that's why
Gainwell's always
he is the head coach. He's the head coach for a reason, man. The outside stuff does not bother them at all. And if this week doesn't show you that, I don't know what will. It showed me. It showed me that in 2024, unlike 2023, if adversity hits, we're going to figure out what it is. We're going to address the elephant in the room. We're going to hash it out. Because we know that we got to go kick the rear ends of the Washington football team and clinch the NFC East this week and still have a chance to
still get the 1 seed,
man. And get a 1 seed, dude.
Yep.
And a banged up Detroit team right now. Who knows
sure,
where this Philadelphia Eagles team can get to if they continue to play like this?
The vibes are high. We'll dive deep into the race for the 1 seed on tomorrow's show. We got crossover Thursday with David Harrison of Locked On Commanders. Still got 3 more podcasts for you this week. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. Until tomorrow, for Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.